Okay, let's unpack this. Think back to the last performance review you were in, either as a manager or, as an employee. Chances are it felt like this big annual backward-looking thing.
Oh, a sprint. Yeah. A really stressful event.
Exactly. And it was so often driven by subjectivity, by inconsistent criteria, and maybe worst of all, a manager trying to remember something that happened, 9 months ago?
Right. For decades, the system it was fundamentally flawed. It relied completely on human memory, on perception. You're trying to squeeze 12 months of really complex work into one, often very rushed conversation.
And that manual process, it just created so much bias. It delayed feedback.
It actively choked off opportunities for real, timely correction and, genuine skill development.
The good news is those days are, they're rapidly becoming history. Our mission today is to do a deep dive into this huge shift that's happening in employee performance management. We're going to look at how AI is moving this from that old subjective check-the-box exercise.
An objective, continuous, data-driven system.
And this isn't just some HR trend. This is a total digital overhaul of how we even measure professional merit.
It is. I mean, this transformation is something businesses just have to do as they embrace more digitization. Yeah. In the past, managers were basically asked to be judges. They had to assign a rating based on their feeling about performance.
Right.
Now, AI shifts that burden. It anchors the whole discussion in continuous, verifiable data, and that lets managers become coaches instead of judges.
So let's start with that historical model, that annual headache you mentioned.
Yeah.
It really did ask managers to be both historians and, fortune tellers.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You had to summarize a whole year's worth of work and then somehow project future growth, all based on notes you probably started taking, 2 weeks before the deadline?
Of course. And that's a recipe for recency bias. Only the last couple of projects end up mattering, which makes it just incredibly difficult to assess long-term, consistent performance fairly.
And that delay in feedbacks seems like the biggest flaw.
It was the fatal flaw. If a key team member started to drift a little or, adopt an inefficient workflow back in April, they wouldn't get any formal documented feedback on it until the end of the year.
And by then, it's way too late.
Way too late. That lag time means weeks, maybe months of wasted effort. It kills employee engagement because they feel totally unsupported. They're left asking, why am I just hearing about this now?
That's the key contrast AI brings. It just collapses that time frame. It takes performance management from a single stressful event
And turns it into an ongoing, flowing stream of data.
We shift from that compliance mindset to a continuous improvement loop almost instantly.
Precisely. And that's the power of integrating real-time data. The system just stops relying on human memory. Instead, these AI tools are continuously pulling from data streams, so tracking performance based on observable metrics captured, daily or even hourly.
And what's the real benefit there, beyond just getting out of that awkward annual meeting?
It creates immediate actionability. So, if a metric starts to trend downward, let's say task completion efficiency on a certain type of project,
The system flags it right away.
it flags it instantly, not 6 months later. And this allows for these frequent, short, data-backed conversations. It empowers employees to course correct right away.
It must foster a sense of support, right? Proactivity.
A sense of support that the old system could never, ever achieve. The conversation becomes, hey, I see the system flagged X. Let's figure out why and fix it today instead of, you failed to fix X over the last year.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. When we talk about real-time data, I think people might just picture a simple spreadsheet of tasks that were completed. But these systems are pulling from incredibly diverse data streams from, deep inside the digital workplace. What exactly are they monitoring?
It's really a 360-degree digital footprint. And yes, we are absolutely looking at traditional output metrics. Lines of code, sales calls, task completion rates.
The basic.
The basics. But the deep dive material really emphasizes how far beyond that these systems go. We're talking about project outcomes, sure, but also these nuanced metrics like collaboration activity.
And what does that even mean, collaboration activity?
It tracks communication flow, cross-functional dependency management, how smoothly work is moving between different people and teams.
And the sources also mention some pretty complex things like well-being indicators and even sentiment analysis. That sounds ambitious.
It is, and it's critical if you want a holistic view. A well-being indicator isn't like an emotion detector.
Right.
It's often a measure of digital fatigue or operational efficiency. For instance, the AI might track meeting overload, how much time you spend in calls versus scheduled focus time.
Or how often you're working late.
Exactly. It tracks how often you log off on time.
Mhm.
This data tells a manager not just what was produced, but the sustainability of that productivity.
Yeah.
Is this person on a path to burnout?
So it's measuring the costs of that output. But what about communication patterns and sentiment analysis? That's where people start to get worried about, intrusiveness.
That's a fair concern. It's really important to understand the mechanism. Sentiment analysis in this context is usually less about judging someone's emotional state and more about detecting friction, workflow blockages.
Okay, an example.
So the system might track responsiveness to customer inquiries, or the turnaround time for internal messages, or even the frequency of, say, critical words in team channels, not to grade feelings, but to highlight communication bottlenecks.
So is this person often the last one to respond to a request?
Precisely. The system just notes that latency. It gives you concrete, measurable data on responsiveness and cooperation.
Okay, so we have all this raw data pouring in every day. Productivity, quality communication, well-being. It's a mountain of information. The key has to be how the AI synthesizes it all. It can't just dump a spreadsheet on a manager's desk.
Absolutely not. The analytical output is highly sophisticated. All that data gets fed into a machine learning platform. And it doesn't just analyze one person's performance trends in a vacuum. It immediately compares that performance against, say, industry benchmarks, team norms, and the organization's strategic goals.
So it provides immediate context.
Immediate useful context. Are you performing well relative to the organization or just, relative to how you did last month?
And then comes the really impactful part, which has to be the personalized feedback. How detailed does that get?
It can get surgically precise. The crucial detail is that the AI generates these personalized development plans and specific feedback points. It moves way beyond generic stuff like, you need to improve teamwork.
To something more concrete.
Way more concrete. For a software engineer, it might be something like, in the last 2 weeks, 15% of your code commits required review cycles longer than 48 hours. Let's focus on front-loading testing, like your peer X does. Or for a salesperson, it might flag that conversion rates are great, but their average deal size is 20% below the team benchmark, suggesting they need to focus on higher value clients.
That makes the human conversation that follows so much more targeted and constructive. You stop arguing about what happened, you can start discussing how to improve it.
Exactly.
But we have to address subjectivity. We said manual reviews were just riddled with manager bias, unconscious favoritism, personality clashes.
The halo effect.
And that's the core promise here, right? That AI can reduce that subjectivity by anchoring everything in objective, quantifiable data.
That's the promise. The assessment is rooted in facts, actions, and measurable outcomes, not personal opinions or, anecdotal evidence. That is the mechanism for fairness.
But here's the pushback I always hear. Critics will argue that even if you use data, the algorithm itself can inherit human biases.
Of course.
If the AI is trained on historical data where certain groups were maybe rated lower, doesn't it just kind of solidify those old problems?
That is a fundamentally important point, and it's why implementation requires a deep attention to data governance. The sources are really clear on this. Achieving true objectivity requires you to constantly audit the input data streams. If a team's project assignment structure historically disadvantages certain employees, and the AI just measures output based on that flawed structure,
The bias is still there. It's just automated now.
the bias remains. So the goal isn't just to measure everything, it's to measure the right things in a way that truly reflects merit.
And how do you ensure that?
Well, the AI systems have to be calibrated to detect objective patterns that are actually relevant to performance. Things like demonstrable consistency or problem-solving skills you can see in how tasks are resolved, or measurable contributions to team success. By analyzing these huge data sets and, crucially, auditing them for proxy bias, the AI can actually uncover positive contributions that a manager might have totally missed.
Okay, so this all sounds like a manager's dream. Efficiency, objectivity, continuous improvement. But let's bring it back to Earth for a second. This kind of system can't be just plug and play. What are the big friction points that organizations run into when they try to deploy this?
The sources point to 3 main ones. First is just cost and implementation complexity. These are not cheap systems.
I can imagine.
You've got licensing fees, you have to customize it for your specific organization, and then you have to integrate it with all your existing HR software, which often don't talk to each other. It's a huge technical and financial hurdle.
So a big upfront investment.
A very big one. The second friction point is cultural. It's the perception of surveillance.
The big brother fear.
Exactly. You're bringing in systems that track organizational behavior pretty deeply. And so companies have to be crystal clear about why this tracking is happening. It's for development and fairness, not for micromanagement. If employees see it as a punitive monitoring tool instead of a developmental aid, the whole purpose is defeated. Morale just collapses.
Which brings us right back to the human element. If AI is handling all the data collection, the trend analysis, the objectivity, it raises the central question, what is the indispensable role left for the human manager?
Right.
Can AI really replace that need for empathy and for, human understanding?
No, absolutely not. The manager's role isn't diminished at all. It's elevated. It's fundamentally transformed. While the AI automates the assessment part of the job, the manager becomes the essential provider of context and emotional intelligence.
They become the bridge between the raw data and the reality of an employee's life.
That's the perfect way to put it. They go from being a judge to being an interpreter and a coach.
So the AI might flag an anomaly.
And the manager has to understand the why. For instance, the AI reports a sharp, sustained dip in someone's collaboration metrics. The manager then has to investigate and apply context. Did that employee just have an unexpected personal challenge? Was the team dynamic strained by a recent change? Were there new client demands that made certain metrics impossible to meet for a while?
Things outside the data stream.
Exactly. Factors that only human judgment can really weigh.
So the manager handles the high-stakes human-centric work. Mentorship, career pathing, conflict resolution, just applying empathy. They curate the employee's growth using the data.
That's it. This collaborative approach, AI providing the objective insights and human judgment providing the context and compassion, that fosters a far more productive and positive experience for everyone.
It's the efficiency of the machine combined with the essential humanity of the manager.
The ultimate synthesis for development.
So what does this all mean? The transition to automated AI-powered performance reviews really seems like a profound leap forward. It's replacing the stress and subjectivity of the past with, a continuous data-backed truth. It's making evaluations more objective, more timely, and genuinely insightful.
And when it's implemented well, making sure that managers truly shift from being assessors to being dedicated coaches, this integrated approach boosts not only the rigor of the reviews, but also overall employee satisfaction and long-term productivity.
The goal isn't just better tracking, it's better talent retention and development.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a really fascinating final thought for you to chew on. If these AI systems can continuously track, measure, and even audit performance data, and then proactively suggest specific developmental steps, what essential skills will future managers need to master? In a world where performance reporting is automated and perfected, what is the single most valuable, non-quantifiable skill a human leader must cultivate to justify their role?
Well, if assessment is a solved problem, then the manager's value has to shift entirely to the cultivation of motivation and purpose. They'll need to become experts in human dynamics, in creating psychological safety, inspiring loyalty, mediating complex emotional conflicts, basically focusing on all the aspects of the human experience that, for now, no algorithm can measure or manage. They have to become the chief motivational officer.